Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So, before we start, I'm going to ask you a question. Today's guest has made substantial investments in its terminal network. So, how many locations do they currently have? Well, let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because I'll let you know at the end of the show. Today, I'm joined by a transportation and logistics company that has been operating for nearly 70 years, and they've been on the show before. This will be their third appearance. So, who are they? Well, it's Werner. Werner is one of the largest truckload carriers in the United States with a diverse range of transportation services. From intermodal and cross border transport to final mile and expedited services, its multimodal solutions are built for businesses demanding precision, flexibility, and speed. And it's Daragh Mahan, Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Werner, that is joining me for the show today. Now, Daragh has more than 20 years of information technology and strategic leadership experience and is passionate about fostering innovation, also working with the startup and founder community in his local area. So today we're going to be talking all about driving competitive advantage for Werner customers. We'll be diving into creating technology built around what customers need most and the challenges shaping those needs. We'll be exploring the importance of robust security and safety solutions and empowering better decision making through real-time visibility. And we'll be taking a closer look at Werner's unique cloud first, cloud now strategy. Now, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome to the show, Daragh.
That's quite an introduction. How are you, Sarah? It's great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. I had a bunch of people tell me that I needed to have you specifically on our show. And so I can't wait to dive in. I mean, this is Werner's third appearance on the show. I've really had some great conversations so far. We've talked generally about Werner and dug into cross-border, your dedicated freight solutions. But I'm really looking to find out more about what you guys are doing today, do an even deeper dive with you and get to know you a little bit more because you're really the magic, I think, behind sort of the innovation, the technology. You've got a whole team, but I think you're the guy I need to talk to. So I encourage everyone to go check out episodes 446 and 460 if you haven't already. But for those that might have missed our previous episodes together, who is Werner? What do you do? How do you help your customers?
So we are probably we like to think of ourselves as the premier transportation company in the US, but we're certainly in the top three or four. We believe we pride ourselves on providing superior service, but we do run all modes of transportation. So initially we started as a truckload carrier. But we also now cover truckload in two forms, dedicated and one way, or our van division. But we also do intermodal. We do logistics. We've got a huge brokerage. And we also do final mile. So we kind of cover the whole gamut of all the modes of transportation that you would want. And we believe that we are excellent and have proven over and over again that we're excellent at every single one of them.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, well, let's find out a little bit more. Now, I talked to Lance Dixon and Eric Downing towards the beginning of the year, and now we're in
I'm
June.
sorry you had to go through that.
They were great. I loved those episodes. But now we're halfway through 2025. Do you have any like reflections on the first half of the year? Like, where are we now? And with all of that in mind, what do you think we should expect from the rest of the year?
I think the first half of the year it's been tough. I mean, we're still in this freight recession, but it's been, we feel like we're coming out of it now. And I think you'll hear it from all of the leaders in the industry that it just feels like things are turning up a little bit and that capacity is getting tight, and freight is at similar levels or maybe even better than it was this time last year. So that's the good news. There's a lot of volatility, but the volatility feels like it's leveling out a little bit. Now, we do have, with the current administration, we've got a lot to work through with tariffs and the on again, off again nature of them. But we have to deal with that. And, the crazy part about that is no predictability. But I suppose it's predictable that it won't be predictable. So it's what we have to deal with, and it's what we're very good at dealing with. So I think that's what's marked the first half of the year. From a technical perspective, it also, has allowed us to spend more and more time on all aspects of the journey that we're on, and we've been on this massive transformation, digital transformation journey across Werner for the past 3 or 4 years. I think 25 has been earmarked as the year of AI. I mean, it started in 23. 24 was, kind of the learnings, how do we get there? How do we use it? And I think in 25 is the year that we've first been putting AI into actual practical use across our space and across our tech stack. So it feels like we're in a really good place with AI and how we're going to use AI. Now, I think the possibilities are endless, and we could talk about that some more. We've also gotten to a point now where I think you guys know, and you probably are aware, that we've been moving all of our operations, all of our tech operations into the cloud. A big chunk of that for us is Mastermind, which is a platform that Mastery are developing and rolling out. And we're finally, we've crossed the Rubicon there. We've gone past the point of no return, and it's been really, really successful for us. We're probably about, in the high 60 percentile of all our freight on the platform, and our goal is to have all of our freight on the platform by the end of this year, which means off of legacy systems, off of on-prem systems, just off of all of the old technology and onto brand new tech stack, which is really exciting for us. Get all our freight in a single platform, complete visibility of that freight across all modes of transportation. And then we can really start to use optimization and AI to help us determine which is the best fit. Of course, the customer will tell you what they want, but there is a growing movement, I think, that we should sell capacity and not modes. And we have capacity, and you tell us where to pick it up and where you want it and by what date and time, and we'll make sure that it gets there and use any mode. So I think what Mastermind and the new tech stack allows us to do is help optimize that way of moving freight. So I think there's an awful lot going on this year. We've got an awful lot going on from a tech perspective, but I think the industry at large, hopefully we'll see a little bit of, I don't know, it'll level out a bit and it'll be a little bit less stressful in the next couple of months.
Let's hope so. Before we pressed record, you were like, I'm living in a little bit of chaos, but I love it. And that's what we do. But that means you're in supply chain, right?
Right. And chaos is, I was saying this just before we started. I mean, part of what's been going on the first half of the year is as the market comes back and as capacity tightens, well, then we have a lot of customer requests. We have a lot of new business coming on board. And in each of those instances, we've got salespeople and we've got operators, who want us to do something from a tech perspective, who have a specific customer request or a piece of technology that we're about to roll out that they want a part of for their customer. And in that lives a little bit of chaos. Like we got to move quickly. We got to get stuff done. And I kind of revel in that chaos. That's where I've been my entire career. You can't be in technology or supply chain without sort of relying on chaos for every single day. It's what happens, and I love it. I revel in it. I really do.
Well, and what I like about what you said previously is that you're laying the foundation, right? You're laying the foundation, and then you can optimize, then you can start using AI. You said that 2025 is the year of AI, but I think people are still trying to figure it out. So I don't know if it's the year of the word AI or actually the year of AI, because we're still working our way through it and trying to figure out. But what I also like that you said is that you're on this digital transformation. You're like 3 to 4 years in, but I don't think it ever ends, right? You're going to lay that foundation, and then you're going to start layering on top of that on how to optimize. Plus, with technology changing all of the time, you have to also be changing with that. And you don't really know what that looks like 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Sarah, I'm kicking myself that I used the phrase digital transformation, because I railed against that. I actually wrote an article about it a couple of years ago saying there is no digital transformation going on. What's going on is modernization. And I really believe, I say it because most people understand what you mean when you say digital transformation. But the reality is most businesses have been digital for 40 years. And most businesses our size have been absolutely digital for 40 years. So what really is going on here, at least in my mind, is modernization. So we're taking age-old on-premise monolithic tech stacks, and we're getting rid of them. I'm getting rid of them, and we're getting rid of them here at Werner, and we're replacing them with multifaceted, multi-component, cloud-based technology. And what that does is allows us to have, get rid of all the old legacy. I also believe that when you go to modernize a tech stack, you've got to just modernize it all. You can't do pieces of it. You can't do parts of it. You've got to do it all. Because what you do is if you have brand new technology and you have old monolithic or old on-premise technology and you try and combine the two, they just never really work well. And then you have tech debt and you've got people who've got to maintain those interfaces, which are not natural. And you just end up stuck in a kind of a no man's land between new tech, old tech. So basically, we're modernizing the tech stack.
So talk to me about that, because you brought up sort of a really unique, well, not really unique, but a challenge that I think everybody is facing, right? Everybody's tech stacks, I believe, from what I'm hearing, are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because there's technology that can solve for this and technology that can solve for that. And you're building technology around what your customers need most. So is that the only challenge that they're facing, or what are some of the other challenges that they're facing? And what types of technologies are they looking for and sort of coming to you for help with?
Yeah, I think if you look at what customers are dealing with, like it's demand unpredictability. Like they just, it's so hard right now to focus on the demand. What do I need? When do I need it? Where do I need it? And how much of it do I need? I mean, it's kind of crazy. There's labor shortages, right? So there's all kinds of labor issues going on across the board. Sustainability. I mean, we all have to deal with sustainability, and it's a good thing that we are. And here at Werner, we're very committed to what we can do from a sustainability perspective. But they have that, and then we have cybersecurity, which should be, and if it's not top of mind for every person in my position, it should be. And then obviously tariffs. I mean, so you combine those 4 or 5 things, and what you have essentially is a very unpredictable environment. And what we have to do as an organization who supply, transportation to to a huge chunk of the country, and we're a major player in the supply chain market. We've got to help sort of level out that playing field and give them technology, give our customers technology that will help them in all of those places. Now, I think what customers really are looking for right now is a level of predictive analysis, some end-to-end visibility. I mean, visibility is huge. I also think we've created a monster when it comes to visibility. And we can talk about that some more, and I'm sure we will. We have automated exception management. So, it's very easy to automate the rule. And that's what we've spent an awful lot of time doing for our customers. But when the exceptions happen, whether it's in, ETA, whether it's in, the load didn't get picked up, the load got picked up, but we had a breakdown. How do we manage and how do we automate those exceptions? And then how do we make sure that our platforms are reliable, they're scalable, they're secure, so that everything we do for a customer is all of those 3 things: reliable, scalable, and secure. So I think that's kind of what's going on at the moment. That's what customers are asking us to do. And that's what we're certainly doing our very best to provide.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point around trust, right?
Yeah.
I think in this industry, a lot of people are hesitant to be sharing the data. And it's more important than ever that they choose the right partner who's thinking about not only their data, but also how they interact from a technology perspective in, like you said, that it's secure, it's reliable, but they can trust you as a partner, right?
Yeah.
What happens if, that partnership breaks down or whatever that looks like? You have to be able to lean on each other and trust each other to do the right thing. And especially if they're going to have access to your data.
Yeah. And I think, for me, the most critical thing right now is getting the security right. So I think in some businesses, in some, just across industry at large, you have to get the cybersecurity part of it right. You have to get the security right. And I do think the good news, at least for me, the most encouraging thing over the past 5 or 6 years is that there is so much more emphasis being put on that trust, the level of trust that says, hey, when you give me your data, we're doing everything that's within our power to make sure that that data is secure. I mean, hackers are very, very smart people. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Why they choose to do what they do, I don't know, but they are very, very smart people. And if you saw some of the attempts that we see on a daily basis to get into our system, not just our system, supply chain systems at large, It's scary. It's scary how good they are, and we've got to be at the top of our game every single day to make sure that we can thwart all those attempts. So, I think that we put an enormous Werner as an organization. We put an enormous amount of investment and more focus than any other part of our tech stack on cybersecurity, and I think that's critical to getting customers to believe that we are trustworthy, that we can take their data, and that we're gonna make sure it's secure.
Yeah, and I have a question because we talked about like large tech stacks, right? And how
Yeah.
everybody seems to have large tech stacks, but what you want to do is really minimize that. Is data being compromised because of those large tech stacks? And is that really something that, organizations need to focus on to reduce the tech stack so that their data or, their security isn't compromised?
So I think it depends on the tech stack. So if I take it back, I think of our tech stack
just
as
to give you a little bit more context
Yeah.
as well, where I'm coming from, that is that if you're sharing your data and you've got links to all these different technologies and building out that tech stack, and you've got so much data going in so many different places. While you were saying that, I was just sort of thinking about, the data could be compromised just because it's in so many different places and in so many different partners' hands.
Yeah. And so I think you have a point, right? And I think what's happening is you're right, data is absolutely everywhere. So if you think about, first of all, I think we have to categorize and we have to classify our data correctly. We spend and have spent up to this point securing an awful lot of data that really doesn't need to be secure. That's public knowledge, that's public availability, right? So an awful lot. So a great example is facilities data. This is just one of those areas where I believe a company like Mastermind already have the right idea here. So if Mastermind serve even half of the top 50 transportation companies in the US, which I believe they will, and then some, and those companies deliver to the same Walmart locations, the same Home Depots, the same Lowe's, you name it, the same Dollar Generals, all of those locations. Right now, today, all of that facility data sits in every one of those systems and every one of those transportation systems individually. If Mastermind just create a centralized point for that data, and all of that data is available to everybody, and it's always up to date, and it's always the same. So that sort of reduces the amount of data that's floating around, and it's all in a centralized place. So I think that's, first of all, we got to be really careful about how we classify data. Mm-hmm. But then when we get to things like customer data, accounting data, finance data, specific IP, legacy data, lane data, whatever that data happens to be, I think it's actually more secure in a more modern tech stack. So first of all, if we move to the cloud, and I think of it as compartmentalized versus larger, it's very, very big today. It just happens to be on premise and probably not as secure as when I go and give my data to Mastermind. They have a whole team of people who take care of that data from a security perspective. Mm-hmm. For example, we use Workday for all of our HR and accounting system. I would rather have our data, our PII or employee data sitting in a platform like Workday, where they've got several thousand security experts, versus sitting on my homegrown platform where I may have 20 or 30 security experts. So I think in reality, what happens is when you sort of diversify, when you have a compartmentalized stack connected by APIs, your data actually ends up being more secure.
More secure. And does that make sense? I appreciate you for answering that. And I know I sort of threw that at you, but that's okay. Where I was going with that, in the fact that, are we compromising ourselves by stretching ourselves too thin from sort of a technology standpoint? But you said it right around compartmentalizing. And do you think that that is the ultimate sort of competitive advantage for customers? Like, what do these customer-facing interactive tools that you're talking about, how do customers use them to access insights, maybe drive better decision making, but also ultimately they want to gain a competitive advantage? So how does all of this help an organization or maybe one of your customers do that?
So I think, first of all, the data is more real-time than it's ever been before. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens is that when we're given data, like, for example, visibility, which is, one of the big sort of topics du jour, or topics of the last 10 years since I've been in the industry. Certainly people talk about visibility. And when you give them real-time access to that visibility, and they know where every load is and where every truck is and when it's going to arrive at the dock, and their ETAs are getting updated, hour by hour, minute by minute versus day by day, or versus them hoping that it shows up. Like, first of all, that gives them a competitive advantage in the sense that they know when something's going to hit my dock, when I can replenish, when I can have it to stores, when I can have it to wherever it's needed. They automatically have better insights into that. I think, that's the first and foremost thing. Like, any access you have to real-time data that you can then use for deeper analytics, for more up-to-date analytics, more current and real-time visibility is always going to help. So I think that's the first thing. I also think, just in general, if we can supply things like, for us, lane data is really important. How many trucks are traveling in a lane? How many loads are in that lane today? What the price is in that lane? What the buy sell rate is for those lanes? Like, that's what makes us more competitive. And then as a result, we can turn around and be really more competitive in our pricing to customers, which gives them, again, a competitive advantage. So if you do business with Werner, compared to where we were 5 years ago in pricing, it is so much more sophisticated, so much more real time than it ever has been before. So when we give a customer, whether it's in the brokerage or whether it's in a bid that we do for dedicated or van, when we give them a rate, we're giving them a really, really, up-to-date rate, which will give them competitive advantage as well, because now they can be much more predictable in what their pricing is going to look like.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, right? Because it is a little bit volatile. It does move all the time. And so utilizing the technology and the data to be able to give real-time visibility, real-time information, real-time rates is going to make a lot of difference for a lot of folks in the industry. Because like, I remember being in trucking and I remember getting a rate, 3 p.m. on a Thursday, and I quoted it and they come back at 4 p.m. on a Friday and they're like, we'll take it. And my transportation partner is like, nope, the rate has changed. And then I got to go back through all of that all over again. I mean, I'm kind of dating myself because, I'm going back to maybe 10, 15 years ago. Right. But if you think about it, some of that is still going on. And do you really want to be working with a partner who's not thinking about what that future looks like and intaking the data that they can use to turn around to empower you to make better decisions for not only your company, but also your customers as well?
Yeah. So, and again, we handle stuff like that, like shipment tracking reports, like geofencing. Like, geofencing is a fantastic tool. Like, we know that when we can break a geofence, we now know that, say, for example, within 5 miles of the customer's facility, we can automatically up them. We have fleet monitoring dashboards. So we know, up to the minute data on every single truck. Like, sometimes we know when the truck's going to break down before the truck breaks down, and we can take proactive measures to make sure that truck's not stuck on the side of the road. We have all kinds of performance insights into the fleet, into the equipment in the fleet. We get updates from tractors. We could take it every 5 minutes right now, but we can, if we need to take it every 5 seconds, we could take that update every 5 seconds. Not very practical, and it put an awful lot of overhead onto the internet and our networks, but we can do that. So I think, anything we can do to help the customer have better insights into what's going on with the freight, with the material that we have on our trucks, or we're about to move for them, or we're thinking of moving for them, or we're going to move in a month for them, just helps them out. It gives them so much better visibility. It is crazy. Like, what the supply chain must look like today compared to 20 years ago in terms of visibility, in terms of inventory management, in terms of freight management, transportation management. It's just night and day. And the beauty of it now is 20 months from now, it will look different. And 20 years from now, it will be unrecognizable. So it's like, tech is that's why I get so excited about it, especially at the pace that we're moving at right now.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's always been fast. It is so much more faster now. The adoption of technology. Mm-hmm. What I say now, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you used to see tech and you'd go, wow, look at that. That wow factor's kind of gone a little bit because you kind of expect it to do everything. So, but I think the wow factor will come back in when we see what AI can really do.
Well, and I'm going to date myself because I picture you at like this control, like you've got all these monitors in front of you and all these buttons, and you're like pressing all these buttons. But really, the modern day of that really is just your monitor and your keyboard, and there's so much more that you can do with that. But I just picture you back in the day in this like control room with all these,
right,
all these screens.
And it's not that, I mean, we actually have a technical operations center here, which we use as our sort of home base where we do all our monitoring of systems. We have the whole fleet connected to it. So it sort of like becomes the hub. But the reality is that we don't need to have that anymore. What we can, like, I can look at anything on my 15-inch laptop or 13-inch laptop as you could. I can work from anywhere. I tell the story all the time. Right before I moved here, I managed a network outage from 40,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean, which 2 years prior to that, I couldn't have done it. I mean, I was just on chat on a MacBook Pro, sitting on a Delta flight coming from Heathrow to Atlanta, and I was able to interact and manage the entire outage the whole way across the ocean. It didn't make for a very pleasant flight, but that's what it was. And so that's only gotten better today. I mean, I can manage it on my phone today. So it's kind of where tech has come in the last 10 years is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talk to us about your data access strategy. How does that help with flexibility, speed, and supporting some of that decision making that we've kind of been talking about?
So I think of data as the great equalizer. It's also a very valuable commodity. It's always surprised me that we haven't figured out a way to account. And I mean, account as in the accounting, how do we value data and how do we put data on the books? Because that's how valuable and that's how important it is. So when I think about data, and how we give customers access to it or how we access it internally, first of all, security is top, right? You got to make sure the right people get the right data at the right time. Now, I do think that, it's sort of like it's what people use to add context. It's how you make action decisions, right? It's all the actionability around that data. It's how I decide what I'm going to order, what trucks I'm going to put it on. So it becomes very, very critical that the data is accurate, that it gets to your supply chain people as quickly as possible. So it's all about how you extract, it's all about how you organize, and it's all about how you share that data. We use a tool called Snowflake. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Snowflake, like it's essentially a modern data warehouse. And the beauty of Snowflake is that as more and more corporations, move on to Snowflake. For example, Mastermind are Snowflake customers. We're Snowflake customers. We can create data shares. We've got customers who are Snowflake customers, and we can create data shares. One of our biggest customers, a retailer, they're moving on to Mastermind. We're on Mastermind. They use Snowflake as well. So we can create this data share where we don't even have to provide the data to them. It's in the data share. So we just agree what data we're going to share to them, and it's there, and they can look at that data and they can determine what, it becomes actionable for them. It's real time. As soon as we make a change in our systems, they see it in their systems. As soon as Mastermind make a change in their systems, it's in their system. It's just fantastic. So we look at that. It provides live location tracking. We give them better ETA predictions. They have exception alerts. But then we also focus on things like data orchestration. So how do we connect a whole bunch of siloed systems and say, okay, here's what data you have in your TMS. Here's what you have in your CRM. Here's what you have in your accounting system. It's all like we talked about earlier, it's all the same data, but it's in 3 different systems. So how do I make sure that it's connected in the right way and it's updated in the right way? And that's what something like a Snowflake, and it doesn't have to be just Snowflake. That's what we happen to use. Mm-hmm. We can then take AI and then sit it on top of that data, and then like the beauty of just natural language. So I can now sit on top of a database where I used to have to be write SQL queries. I used to have to know SQL. Now I can just simply say, how many times today did we deliver to a customer, and within this window, what truck number was. I can just type how many trucks are in this location at this terminal at this time, and I can absolutely just see that immediately. Now, on the other side of that is for the customer. So if a customer needs to yard manage, whereas before we used to have a yard management system, now I can just say to them, hey, here's a visibility, here's a map of your yard, and every Werner trailer is sitting on that. You can click on that trailer, you can see the trailer number, you can see whether it's loaded or unloaded. If it is loaded, what freight's on it? If it is that mean it's coming in to get unloaded, or is it waiting to get picked up to go out? Right. And we could do that real time. And we've had customers we've done exactly that for. So I think it's all about how you share that data, how you give access to it, and you do it all in real time.
Well, and like you said, break down those silos. I mean,
Yeah,
traditionally, supply chain is all about the silos. Let's keep
right.
everybody separate. Let's not collaborate.
Yeah,
But also, I think people have been hesitant to collaborate, especially when it comes to data. Because, like I said earlier, they're not entirely sure they want to share it with their partners. And if they do share it with their partners, they're not sure how much to or what to share,
right.
et cetera, that won't compromise their competitive advantage. Now, you've talked about this a couple of times already. You've talked about how important security is, cybersecurity. And a lot of organizations, they want to keep their data safe, but they absolutely have to. I mean, cyber threats are on the rise, as are physical cargo thefts. And so it's a really risky environment right now that could cost companies a lot of money. So, can you give us a little bit of an overview of your security and safety solutions, maybe how they're protecting what matters most to your customers?
Yeah, I think the first one is the cargo security, right? So cargo thefts are on the rise. They're like, I mean, it's an epidemic across the US. It always has been, and I think we have more visibility to it. So we're using, again, I won't speak to the physical way that we manage it because that's more the brokerage guys could talk that. We actually have we have an entire team who manage and make sure that our cargo is protected and is as safe as it can be. But we are using tools. So, for example, to make sure that when we have carriers come on board, that we onboard the right brokerage carriers, we use a tool called Highway. I think everyone is. It's sort of Highway has become a very very fast mover in that space. So we use them to onboard, and what they do when as we onboard is they make sure A, that they meet all the criteria that we need, but B, that they have everything about them adds up, so that when we look at them,
Mhm.
have they got the right insurance? Are they really coming from the right? We just do things like test IP addresses to make sure that there's no fraud going on, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I won't talk about that we use to make sure that those carriers are the safest possible carriers we could put freight on. So we do a lot of that. Now, when we talk about security, cybersecurity is where, like, that's you, as you can imagine, it's the one thing I say that keeps me awake at night, because it really does come into, if you think about cybersecurity and a hack and an attack as anything other than when and not if, when it's going to happen to me, you have to think about it that way. You have to think about how vulnerable you can be and how you shut down those vulnerabilities, or how you watch those vulnerabilities to
Mhm.
make sure. So what we've done internally is, 5 years ago when I joined Werner, we already had a good cybersecurity team, but we beefed that up. We added some people to it, but we also added all of the right tools. And honestly, we were in a bit of a weird place for a couple of years because we are moving for on-prem software, where typically on-prem, you manage the perimeter and then you watch the traffic that moves in and out of your perimeter and what it does once it gets inside, if it gets inside. And then as we move from there to cloud-based platforms, how do we manage cloud-based? So what we do in the cloud-based world is you move to this zero trust mentality, which means that you assume your perimeter has been breached. You assume that
Right.
somebody's in your systems all the time. But what you do is, once they get into any part of your system, how do you contain them? How do you maintain the security of just that piece of your system? So we've implemented a zero trust mechanism, and it's a philosophy really, because what it does is it stops people jumping from one area of your business to the other. Now,
Right.
we don't ever want them to be in there. We monitor to make sure they're not, but if they are, they can only get so far without having to jump through another hoop. And then everywhere along the way, we install tripwires. So we look for oddities, we look for things that shouldn't be happening, we look for anything that's strange or out of the ordinary, and we alert immediately on that. And when we get alerts, the entire team goes into high gear
Right.
and swarms on it and tries to fix it. So
Wow.
I don't want to. One of the things I don't want to do is, and I'm always reluctant to talk too much about cybersecurity, just
Sure.
because there are bad guys looking at us, and I wouldn't be the first CIO to get up there and be very proud about what they've built, only to get hacked in the next week or so.
Right.
And so what's really important to me is that we recognize that this is the one area that any company can be hit with. When it happens, we should have sympathy for those companies, because it's just for the grace of God that it's us, it's them and not us at that point in time.
Right.
But we really should all focus on it as a method. It really is the one thing that, if I'm a foreign actor and I want to take down the United States, one of the first places I'm going to go is transportation and supply chain, because that can
Mhm.
cripple the company. So everyone in the transportation world, everyone on the supply chain, everyone who's got anything to do with it should really, really take cybersecurity
Yeah. And I hope
very, very
everybody
seriously.
listens to that and really understands what their role and
Hmm.
responsibility is in that, because we don't talk about that enough and how
Yeah,
interconnected we are. But I really appreciate you. I want to acknowledge and appreciate you for sharing part of what that looks like and what is possible and why you did it the way that you did without, giving anything away to sort of compromise what you've put together.
yeah.
And it also gives everybody else an idea of what's possible, but also how they should be thinking about it and, working on it. So now I do need to get to our next question, because at the beginning of the show, I talked about how you have a cloud first, cloud now strategy, and you've mentioned it a few times. And I
Yeah.
think it also helps with your strategy around security as well. Can you just talk to us about what that means to you and how that translates to results for customers? Now,
So,
we talked earlier about how it reduced your tech stack, right? Or condensed it, which is the word that you used. What are the other sort of benefits, and what does that mean?
So I think when we talk about cloud, I think the misnomer is we're moving to the cloud. I mean, we are, but we're also designing everything for the cloud. So it's not like we're just taking what we had on prem and replicating it in the cloud. So that's not what we're doing at all. So that we're actually designing our systems to be cloud-based systems, and then to take advantage of everything the cloud has to offer. So for me, it comes down to, would I rather have on-prem based solutions that are so customized that anyone who wants to come in and connect to them, like customers, for example, and mostly customers, that we have to do a complete design of that interface? Or do I move to cloud-based platforms like Mastermind, like Workday, like Salesforce, which have open APIs that I can just plumb into any customer who wants to exchange data? So that to me is the beauty of the cloud. It is extensible, it's connective, it's all about connection, it's all about connectivity. So what we've done is we've started to lift and shift all of our systems to the cloud. And again, the lift part is just take the old, sort of TMS, kind of throw away all the bad parts, stick with the good parts, and then how do we move those into the cloud? We have a wealth of knowledge here in terms of we just have, you walk around this building and it just fascinates me how many people have been in this industry as long as they've been in it. So we have all these years and years of knowledge, and what we've tried to do along with Mastermind is take all of that knowledge and sort of build that knowledge into how we automate our transportation management system. So we get the benefit of all of that knowledge. We put it to the cloud, and all of a sudden we have cloud-based systems that are connected and we have connectivity to any of our customers who want them.
Right.
So
And you've included the team in that, because that's the biggest part of digital transformation, right? It's only 20% technology. The rest is change management and people management and things like that. And so the fact that you've included them in this sort of transition of what you're trying to do to take it to the next step, I think people probably, liked that, right? They were able to contribute the knowledge and the time that they've spent in this industry to be able to help evolutionize what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's like I always say this, like the tech part, and I'm being a little bit simplistic here, but the tech part is easy. It's really the change management part that becomes so hard. And part of that is because when you have people, especially in an industry, in a company like Werner, who have been so involved and are so engaged, they're lifers. I mean, they love this industry. And when they have put so much effort into the systems that they're sitting looking at, and that system works exactly the way they want, and they can do this job so, I won't say easily, because it's not easy, but they can do it so well that they don't want to give up that part of their technology that makes their life easy. And what we have to do is prove to them, hey, give us more of that information. Let us build that into the stack that we're putting together, and then your life becomes easier again. And that's what's been happening. The change management part is always really, really hard, because you're screwing with what people have put a lifelong of knowledge and expertise and work and blood, sweat, and tears into. So that's the first thing that we always do. Is I say this all the time: give me change management people, and the technology will take care of itself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right. So we're coming to the end of our conversation. I want to sort of ask you, because we've covered a lot in this particular episode. What do you think is one thing you'd like people to walk away from this conversation, maybe thinking about or taking action on? I mean, you're very well versed in technology and innovation and how you see it evolutionizing the industry and what you're doing
Yeah.
at Warner. And I think I'd like to take some of that passion and some of that innovation and give it to somebody listening to this episode to sort of take away and do something with. What do you think that
Well,
that one thing is?
I probably have about five things, but
Okay,
I think
five. You can do five, but like keep it to a couple
I
minutes.
I will. The first thing I would say is Werner. I mean, just as a company, this is a company that just can do your business. Like that is the single most important thing. We're experts in the space. We are fantastic at customer service. We're fantastic at what we do. So no matter what sort of freight you have, no matter what capacity you need, you really should stop at Werner first. We're easy to get a hold of. We're not knocking on your door. We should be, but if we are, please open the door and let's talk to us because we're great at what we do. So that's I believe that with a passion, and I've learned that over the 5 years I've been here. These guys, these people are just experts. So for me, cybersecurity is number one. Like we can build all the great systems we want. If they're not secure, they're no good to anybody because we will just fall down if that's what happens. So cybersecurity, if we can get everyone in the supply chain, everyone in the industry to pay particular attention to security, that's the first thing. Then the second thing I think is what I'm really passionate about in the transportation and supply chain space is that we have got to modernize our tech stacks. If you look at what we have today, is we have a whole bunch of monolithic, like we have a whole bunch of transportation companies, supply chain companies, retailers, where we have older technology sitting on monolithic ERP systems in data centers, private data centers all over the country. And I think we need to start opening that up and thinking about how do we move to the cloud? How do we make ourselves more connected? And the more connected we are, the more free-flowing data, secure free-flowing data we have. And the more free-flowing data we have, the better the supply chain operates for everybody. So I think if that's the part I could be most passionate about, is just how do we modernize? And once you realize how to modernize, get there as quickly as you can, strand all your old tech debt, get rid of it, and get rid of it by moving to the cloud and becoming really, really safe. And then finally, we need to get rid of email. Email is the one productivity sapping, cybersecurity dangerous. It sucks in every way. And I do think that there are so many better ways to to have conversations, better ways to communicate. Email is not one of them.
Okay,
and I see you looking at your clock.
What is the alternative to email? Because I use a lot of email, and I just don't know what the alternative is. So we're we're experiencing, I think a lot of organizations have new firewalls and things like that. So a lot of emails end up in spam anyways. So I'm interested to hear what your alternative is because I've been thinking about this, to be honest.
So the first thing to know is that 95% of all corporate cybersecurity attacks last year originated with email. So a link in an email, a malware file sent, some kind of a connection issue that caused hackers to have access to your system. Email. It is the most dangerous from a cybersecurity perspective. It is the single most easiest to use attack vector, and that's where hackers go first every single time. Think about that. 95% of attacks came through email. So that's the first thing. It's not secure. The second thing is it is so, when we think, and part of the security issue is people attach files. They still attach Excel, Microsoft Word, files to email and then send it. It is the least secure way you can send information, even if that file is encrypted and even if that file is password secured. A hacker gets their hands, they can intercept that email anywhere out in the wild. They can get in there because you've given them the time to go after it. So that's another reason. Now, the alternatives are you can use things like data shares, like Google Drive, like OneDrive, to share those files. And when you share those files, then you can use the tools that come along with. So when you're in Google Drive, use chat in Google. You can use Zoom chat. You can use text. If you're all using Macs, you can use text on it. So you can talk in much more secure ways on an encrypted, on a private platform that doesn't ever go out into the wild, or at least if it goes into the wild, it's on a private channel. There are so many, like today, we're using OneDrive, for example. We use Zoom chat, and I can operate entirely in a single day without ever having to go to email if everybody else would just do the same thing.
But is that internal or also for external?
No, we can get, so we have other, like you use Zoom, right? So I can give you access to my Zoom chat. So you can be in my instance and you can talk to me all day. It's a very simple thing to do. It takes a click or two, but it gives me access to you and you access to me, and it's not in the clear. It's in an encrypted channel, and it's a private channel, and it never goes over. I mean, it goes over the internet, but it goes over a private channel on the internet. So whereas email is in the clear all the time. Most email, I don't even think people realize this. Email is just flopping around the country in the clear. Anyone can intercept your email, and most hackers can do it like that. Can read all your private messages, and you give them the ability to get onto your computer and hack not just your computer. It could be a personal hack, but it can also be a corporate hack. It can be a massive outage, and almost all of them start with email.
Well,
it is the single worst
much.
invention in technology.
That was a little bit selfish for the end of that episode,
no, that's okay.
It was definitely necessary, I think, for a lot of people to hear. So transportation and logistics are the backbone of the economy. And as the industry changes, technology and innovation are essential to remain successful. Werner's technology approach enables better visibility, results, and outcomes. Their state-of-the-art cloud-based technology enables them to prioritize safety, access real-time analytics, and routing information to deliver you a competitive advantage. Now, did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you how many terminal and drop yard locations are currently a part of Werner's terminal network. Well, it's more than 60. In fact, more than 90% of the U.S. population is within 150 miles of a Werner dedicated fleet location terminal or Roadmaster driver school, making them the partner you need. If you want to find out more, you can head over to werner.com. That's WERNER.com. A massive thanks to the team at Werner for making this episode happen. And Daragh, thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.